Another crisis, another prime minister. This time the Shah appointed a military man, General Azhari, and tasked him with bringing back law and order.
Martial law and a new military government are no long-term solutions to Iran's political problems, simply a short-term response to the violence of the past few days. The fact is, the Shah has failed to make civilian government work because he wasn't prepared to let his governments go as far as their opponents wanted them to. Now, a new military government will no doubt jam the lid hard down on political life once again. But until a proper solution is found here, there can be no satisfactory form of government for Iran.
But while the new military government was meant as a demonstration of strength, the embattled Shah was simultaneously offering concessions. Among the gestures was a mass release of political prisoners.
در یک شب مامورین اومدن اعلام کردن که لیست آوردن که فلانی و فلانی و فلانی آماده بشن، لباسشون بپوشن، آزادن برن. که اون لیست شامل 1000 نفر میشد. اولین زندانیان سری زندانیان سیاسی که آزاد شدن حدود 1000 نفر بودن، روز 4 آبان بود که منم جز اونها بودم. دیگه از زندان آزاد شدیم و از فردا دیدیم و خیابون‌ها چقدر شلوغ، مردم در ازدحامن، تظاهرات هست و خلاصه ما هم دیگه شروع کردیم به شرکت در تظاهرات در کنار مردم.
In a further sop to the crowds, the Shah ordered the arrest of a number of his former ministers. But far from appeasing his opponents, the move was interpreted as a clear sign of his weakness. The Shah's allies simply felt betrayed. Dariush Homayoun was one of those arrested and imprisoned.
نمیتونستم هیچ احساس ستایشی بکنم. حالا کمتری نیست که میتونم بگم. محترمانه تری نیست که میتونم بگم. اصلا به کلی سقوط کرد برای من. تمام شد اصلا. هیچ شایستگی نداره دیگه. اصلا برای مقامش شایستگی نداشت اون موقع. اون قیافه‌ای که من دیدم اون حالت شاه نبود. آدم بدبخت ذلیلی بود که بود دیگه اون موقع اینطور بود.
Amir Abbas Hoveyda, who served the Shah for 13 years as Prime Minister, was also arrested.
بعد خیلی ناراحت بودن. البته آدم با گذشت زمان میبینه که چقدر کار اشتباهی بود و باعث تأسف و همیشون هم یه از وزرایی که گرفتن. برای متاسفانه اون موقع اینقدر شرایط شلوغ و قاطی و عقاید مختلف می آمد و میرفت که خب یه تصمیماتی گرفته میشد که بعد آدم میبینه که تصمیمات درستی نبود. ولی خب این موقعی که آدم به عقب نگاه میکنه.
But despite the new military government, the anticipated crackdown on the demonstrations didn't materialize. The Shah no longer appeared to have the stomach for a fight.
اگر شاه واقعاً میخواست تظاهرات مردم رو سرکوب بکنه و کشتار وسیعی را بندازه، هرگز مردم نمیدونن تو اون تظاهرات میلیونی شرکت بکنن. تظاهرات میلیونی زمانی شروع شد که اطمینان پیدا کردن که کشت و کشتاری در بین نیست. سربازها رفتن تو سربازخونه ها، تو پادگان ها و کاملا در امنیت هستن.
By December, when millions of devout Iranians turned out for the annual Ashura, the anniversary of the death of Imam Hussein, the event turned into a pro-Khomeini demonstration of epic proportion.
This, then, is what the military government claims to be the minority voice of dissent in Iran today. This, no doubt, is what they'll later claim also to be a purely religious demonstration. But there's no mistaking what this, in fact, really is. It's a massive voice of protest against the rule of the Shah.
وقتی که فیلم ویدیوی تظاهرات عاشورا تاسوعا آمد، آقای خمینی برای اولین بار این رو به طور عینی لمس کرد که چه جایگاهی در انقلاب داره و جامعه داره کجا میره. نه تنها ایشون، خوب برای خود ما هم خیلی جالب بود دیگه. تا اون زمان ما چنین چیزهایی رو ندیده بودیم.
Counter demonstrations in favor of the Shah, organized by Savak, felt less than convincing.
Cars which did not show a royal portrait had their windscreen smashed by either the troops, the police or the demonstrators. Plainclothes agents who readily identified themselves made no secret of their role as crowd rousers. As with the cars, any shops not displaying loyal pictures were set upon by the demonstrators. Youths wielding sticks and stones, running down the streets, breaking windows and breaking heads when the mood took them.
In contrast to the previous year when they'd hosted a banquet for President Carter, the Shah and his wife celebrated the new year of 1979 quietly.
یعنی هر روز آدم میدید چجوری مثل یه بهمن از یه چیز اول تظاهرات کوچیکی که شروع شد اینجا و اونجا هی بزرگتر و بزرگتر شد و میگم مخالفین خیلی متشکل بودن و در اول که آدم فکر نمیکرد این تظاهرات یه چیزی که میخواد تمام اساس مملکت رو به هم بزنه و عکس العمل دولت هم اونجوری که باید درست نبود یا سعی میکردن در اون موقع یه کارهایی بکنن که نتیجه نداد. دیگه اواخر بود دیگه بعد از ازهاری فکر میکنم که یادم تیمسار اویسی و تیمسار مقدم آمدن پیش من گفتن اگه تا 2 روز دیگه علازت یه نخست وزیر رو انتخاب نکنن ممکنه اصلا مردم از جنوب شهر بیان به کاخ حمله کنن.
In a final bid to save his throne, the Shah asked an opposition member, Shahpur Bakhtiar, to become the new prime minister. In the early 50s, Bakhtiar had been a junior minister in Mohammad Mossadegh's government. When he became prime minister in 1951, Mossadegh had tried and failed to curb the Shah's power. Bakhtiar's first act was to dissolve SAVAK and arrest a number of former ministers.
Mr. Bakhtiar, good morning. Could you say a few words for English television?
Government, please.
Would be the punishment of the person who was in charge for torture, for bribery and so and so.
It's generally agreed that the government of Dr. Bakhtiar has only a slim chance of success and that depends to a great extent on whether or not the Shah will go. With the question of that still clearly far from being resolved, the position of Iran's 4th Prime Minister in 5 months can at best be described as precarious.
The Shah's new Prime Minister had no confidence in his king. One of Bakhtiar's conditions for accepting the premiership was that the Shah should leave the country. As the Shah's power ebbed away, the American government was split on the best way forward. They saw the Shah as a useful ally in the battle to counter Soviet influence in the region. Under President Nixon, he'd been encouraged to build up his military and become America's gendarme in the Persian Gulf. Despite initial reservations, President Carter had continued the policy. Now, Carter's national security advisor, Zbigniew Brzezinski, a staunch anti-communist of Polish origin, wanted to encourage the Shah to crush the demonstrations and shore up his position once and for all. But Carter's Secretary of State, Cyrus Vance, was in favor of talking to the Ayatollah and his revolutionaries. In early January, the leaders of the US, France, Britain and Germany discussed the crisis at an informal conference in Guadeloupe. According to the New York Times, they agreed that although a new government in Iran may create difficulties for the Americans, it will be essentially pro-Western and not communist-oriented. In effect, they had given up on the Shah and were encouraged rather than alarmed by what they were hearing from Paris.
In Iran, there is no talk of communism, and even if there are communists, they're in a minority. In Iran, there is no danger of communists jeopardizing the interests of others. We want neither the communists nor any other foreigners, whatever power they have, to interfere in the affairs of Iran. We want to achieve our own liberty and independence.
On his return from the conference, the French President Valéry Giscard d'Estaing brought a message from President Carter for Ayatollah Khomeini.
محتوای متن این بودش که به زودی شاه ایران رو ترک میکنه. دولت امریکا میخواد که آقای خمینی از دولت بختیار حمایت بکنه. سومی که اگر چنانچه آقای خمینی از دولت بختیار حمایت نکنه، بختیار سقوط بکنه نظامیان کودتا میکنند. خب محتوا تقریبا این بود. آقای خمینی هم جواب داد که اولا بختیار کاری نیست، بختیار قانونی نیستش، دو اینکه نظامیان اختیارش دست امریکایی هاست، اگر چنانچه نظامیا بخوان کودتا بکنن مردم میدانن که امریکایی‌ها دارن این کارو میکنن و مردم مقاومت میکنن، منم حکم جهاد خواهم داد، از این حرفا، و دولت امریکا مسئول خواهد بود. توصیه کرده بودن که امریکا دست از حمایت بختیار برداره، بذاره خود مردم ماها عرض کنم که اوضاع رو بهتر میتوانیم آرام بکنیم تا شما.
On January the 16th, the Shah accepted the inevitable and announced that he was leaving Iran for a holiday.